Hello everyone, this is Schism. I got a 2,000 point battle put my Empire versus Warriors of Chaos. Now my opponent here forgot a few of his models, so I had to slim down my list a bit, and unfortunately I had to slim out some of my cool toys. My opponent had to take some unusual choices, but it was a fair enough battle altogether. So starting off on his far right, he has 6 Chaos Hounds here with Vanguard and Poison attacks. I know, a little weird, but oh well. To the left of that, he's got 20 or so Chaos Warriors with the Mark of Nurgle. And in that unit is his BSB with a Mark of Nurgle and an Ogre Blade and a Dragon Helm and a Shield. To the left of that unit, there is 20 or so Chaos Warriors with the Mark of Tizniche. That unit is rocking the Standard of Discipline. Also in that unit, on the far left corner, there's an Exalted Hero with a third eye of Tizniche, Mark of Tizniche, Shield, and a Flail for some combat punch, and it takes some challenges. And also in that unit is a level 4 with a Scaled Skin, Dispel Scroll, Enchanted Shield, Sword of Might, and a Talisman of Endurance. For spells, he rolled up Spirit Leech, Curse of the Lampshade, Soul Blight, and Fate of Bijuna. So some good sniping spells there, always scary. To the left of that unit, there is 3 Dragon Ogres with additional hand weapons, and then 5 Chaos Knights. And he's kind of, you can tell, he's hurt, all cuddled up in this corner here. Now, starting on my far left, this is a giant piece of impassable terrain here, I should say, in the front and center. On the far left, I have 3 Demigryph Knights. To the right of that, I have 3 Demigryph Knights, and then I have 45 Halberdiers here with a Warrior Priest with a heavy armor and shield for some hatred and hopefully some prayers. Then to the right of that, there's 45 more Halberdiers, so yeah, it's a lot of beef and bodies here with an Arch Lector. He's rocking the armor of Silver Steel, a Crown of Command, and a great weapon, so hopefully some prayers and some hatred. Behind that unit, there's 10 archers here, and there's a level 4 with a Dispel Scroll rocking the Lore of Light. For spells, I rolled up Fast Protection, Light of Battle, Speed of Light, and Net of Amnatok. So some pretty decent bubble spells here. Light of Battle is always good when you're men because you're probably going to lose a lot of combats, and it's nice to pass some tests or auto-pass some tests. Speed of Light, weapon skill initiative, can't argue with it. And Fast Protection, -1 to hit, will put me somewhat on an even playing field with his Mark and Nurgle units here. And the Net of Amnatok is, when I'm not in combat, don't have to worry about it. It's always nice to throw a net out. You never know what you might get. To the right of that unit, there is 30 Great Swords, and in that unit, there is a BSB with full plate mail and an Enchanted Shield. So yeah, pretty nuts and bolt army here. Just a lot of troops. With the 500 points I took out was my 2 Great Cannons, my Hurricaneum, and my Peg Hero. So a lot of my toys gone. It leaves just my meat and potatoes. So there's a Vanguard with the Chaos Hounds, and then turn 1, he moves his Hounds up by the building like so, and his Warriors march over the fence. His Knights move off to the left flank to take care of the Demigryphs. He doesn't want me flanking him. And the Dragon Ogres kind of tiptoe to the forest. And here you can see his general, this level 4, is actually a converted Warrior Priest. So that's pretty cool. Adds a little bit of fluff and theme to the battle. The Empire is trying to take out their Warrior Priest gone wrong, who happens to be a mad level 4 sorceress, but whatever. However, this sorcerer on turn 1 decides to boosted Spirit Leech my BSB and plucks him from the world. So he's dead. My BSB turn 1, not so great. However, I take turn 1 to charge his Hounds here with my Great Sword. Should be a quick sweep and clear process there. Then my Halberdiers march over the fence here, both of the blocks, and the archers move up to the fence just so I can get some bubble spells off with my sorcerer. My Demigryphs move up to keep toe. And here, the Demigryphs on the far left just round around this impassable terrain to harry the flank here. In the magic phase, I get off Speed of Light on my Great Swords. I don't really need it. I'm just trying to bait out some dice. But the weapon skill initiative 10, not that it matters too much against these dogs. And then I also get off the Fast Protection 12-inch bubble, so if he does decide to charge me, charge my flank, if somehow I get stuck in one of those dogs, which is probably impossible, but I will have -1 to hit, which is always nice. And I did manage to also get off Light of Battle here. I think I rolled a double 6 magic phase here, so I have 12 dice, so I'm just throwing dice at whatever I can. And I also managed to get off Net of Amnitalk, so I could successfully get off every spell my sorcerer has. And I cast it on his level 4 unit here, just, maybe stop the movement, maybe stop the charge, but hopefully stop his magic phase. More so than anything else. I mean, he does have a hero in there, so it's strength 5, so he's only failing on a 6. And in the combat, particularly, I just beat the ever-loving poo out of these dogs, and I just turn and reform to face his battle line. So he takes turn 2, and he charges his Nurgle Warriors into my Greatswords. I'm not too confident because he does have that really bashy hero in there, and he's marking Nurgle, so it's a good compliment. And he tries to charge with his Warriors here as well, and he fails his Net of Amnitalk test, takes D6 strength 4 hits, and he punks one of his Chaos Warriors. So pretty successful net, I must say. His Dragon Ogres move into my Demogryph Knights here and attempt to get the charge off and try and break them. And he needed, this was like a 19-inch charge here, so he needed like an insane amount of die rolling to get this charge. And he said, hell, why not? And he rolled double 6s, so he completes this charge, which is not good for me. And in the magic phase, he managed to get off Soul Blight. I'm so scared to death now of his character snipes. I have to let Soul Blight go to stop him from character sniping my Archlector or my other Warrior Priest. So the punishment for that is I do have to deal with Soul Blight now. In the combat here, I don't roll so well in my Demigryphs. Only do 1 wound. The strength 5 Demigryphs with armor piercing. He's still got a 4-up save versus it, so he makes most of his saves and only manages to fell one of these Chaos Warriors. And he does 1 wound to me in return. He wins the combat because of a charge and banner and all that nasty crap. And I break from combat and I flee, and he does not run me down. In the combat over here, I do 6 wounds to his Dragon Ogres in an impressive showing here. He does 1 wound to me. However, he does stick. And in the combat over here, I manage to do 3 wounds to his Nurgle Warriors. He does 4 wounds to me. He's got a charge and all that wonderful stuff, but I'm stubborn and I stick. So my turn 2, I take this opportunity, as most gluttons would, and I charge the flank with my horde of halberdiers and my Archlector General. So I have a whole bunch of halberdiers in the flank with some rerolls from hatred, and I should deny his ranks, and he won't be steadfast or anything like that. So it's looking pretty good here. Hopefully we'll be able to break this unit and run him down. And I take my other horde of halberdiers and I charge the flank of his Dragon Ogres, right? It seems good, simple, all is well. I have hatred and I have a crap ton of halberdiers. My Demogryphs decide that they don't want to rally, and they continue to flee through this building. I take a bunch of dangerous terrain, and one Demogryph just dies. In the magic phase, just for some added protection, I managed to get off the 12-inch bubble files protection. The combat over here, I only do 4 wounds to the Dragon Ogres, which is pretty paltry considering the amount of attacks. He attacks my fleshy halberdiers to get some combat res here. He kills 3 of the halberdiers. However, I win combat by landslide. I break his Dragon Ogres. I run him down with my Demogryph Knights, and I just elect to reform my halberdiers here. So in the combat over here, as you can see just by the numbers on the board, it was absolutely disgusting rolling on my behalf. So keep in mind my Greatswords are still soul-blighted here. He issues a challenge with his Exalted, and since I don't want to put my Archlector in there, I accept with my Halberdier Champion. And he completely gacks the Halberdier Champion. He does 2 wounds of overkill. And then he does 2 wounds on my Greatsword unit. I manage to do 4 wounds back, and he also does a wound on the Halberdier unit. I do only 4 wounds back to him. I win combat, but it's not enough to put him on double 1s or anything like that, and he actually passes this test with his rerollable leadership. So what was once looked quite fortuitous for the Empire, he managed to stick his rerollable leadership test here, and I get stuck out in the open. So now what this does, it gives my flank to his Tiznich Warriors unit up top there, which is not what I wanted to happen. Now, luckily, I do have the crown of command here on my Archlector, so I am stubborn, but still not an ideal situation. So his turn 3, he takes his Chaos Warriors and charges the flank of my Halberdier unit. And he takes his Chaos Warriors and he reforms them and marches up to deal with the Demogryph, the other set of Demogryphs on this flank here. In the magic phase, he does manage to eke off Soul Blight again. I tried to stop it, but I couldn't. You know, he's in combat now, so 3/4 of the spells are ineffective, but he threw all the dice he could at Soul Blight, and I couldn't catch it, so that's that. In the combat here, the Exalted issues another challenge, and I don't want to give him my General, so I give him my Great Swords Champion, and he manages to kill him in epic fashion with 3 wounds of Overkill. Also in the combat, he puts 5 wounds on the Great Swords and 7 wounds on the Halberdiers. So he's racking up a massive amount of kills here for combat resolution. However, both these units are stubborn because of the Great Sword's innate ability and because of my Arch Lector. So I'm not really worried about breaking. I just want to keep as many numbers so I'd be able to win in the next round of combat because I have that other unit of Halberdiers waiting in the wings there. And in total, with all my attacks and everything I could possibly muster, I only managed to do 4 wounds to the Nurgle warriors. So I'm slowly grinding these guys down to pace, but it's way too slow for my liking. So my turn 3, these demigryphs do fail to rally, so they just run right off the board. What a waste they were. I reformed these demigryphs to face off against the knights. It's gonna happen. And I did take my halberdier unit and charge the flank of his Chaos Warriors of Tiznich and his level 4. So now you can see this combat is one giant combat line of fleshy goodness. My paltry halberdiers versus some pretty tough here Warriors of Chaos. So right now I'm loving this situation. So once again, I'll negate his ranks. I have his flanks. I have hatred on that unit, that fresh unit there, and I have a crap ton of a metric crap ton of bodies here, and combat res just from charges and flanks. So in the magic phase, I try and go for a fast protection, and I fail to cast. I think I rolled a 12 dice magic phase, and I threw 3 or 4 dice at fast protection. I failed to cast. So my magic phase is epically stunted, so I take 6 dice, and I irresistibly get my bounce spell off here. So this unit does have a 5+ ward, so hopefully that'll be able to stifle some of his combat res. And then I go with my great swords, who are soul blooded still. And this is, I rolled a hit, and I rolled a hit with, you know, this, I rolled 8 or 9 rolled a hit. What is this here? 5, 6, 7, 8 hits. And this is my roll to wound. I failed to wound with. This is the turn that I need the combat res. All I have to do is win combat res, and then my negation of ranks and my charging bonus and all that should allow me to win this combat and negate steadfast and hopefully break him. However, this is how my greatswords decide to perform, and I failed to wound with all 8 of these, which was not a great way to start this combat. And here you can see after that epic fail of rolling by the greatswords take 2 wounds. The challenge I had to accept with my Arch Lector. He does 2 wounds with his BSB, which is good, so I'm still stubborn. My Arch Lector's still alive. However, he only has 1 wound left. There's 5 wounds on the center halberdier unit, and 7 wounds come off the leftmost halberdier unit. And that's mainly because he has that exalted champion with a flail in there who's strength of bajillion at this juncture. However, my halberdier unit does manage to show up with a freshly charged one there, and it does 7 wounds to his Tiznich warriors, which is good because my other halberdier unit and my greatswords only managed to topple a single chaos warrior. So where I needed to generate a massive amount of combat res, at least win this combat and let my my charge and my negation of ranks kick in here, I just wasn't able to muster the amount of casualties to sway this. So there you can see the 7, 5, 2, and 2 is far greater than my 7 and 1 as far as actual kills here, and he manages to win this combat, believe it or not. And this roll here is my fleeing roll with my general's unit. I managed to roll double 1s, and he pursued my general's unit and runs them down. And my other halberdier unit, which I needed to stick, manages to fail their break tests as well, and they flee. So there you can see what was once a fortuitous situation turns into just a pile of slag. So that brings us to Chaos Warriors turn 4. He just reforms his sorcerer here, and he's just going to try and death spell the crap out of my level 4. His Chaos Knights go into my demigryphs, and he manages to soul blight my greatswords once again. In the combat here with the demigryphs, he manages to put 2 wounds on my demigryphs. I take 2 wounds off his Chaos Warriors. and we stick. In the combat here, he wallops the great swords for 7, and I do no wounds to him in return. Once again, a paltry showing by these great swords. And this time I break and I run, so my banner dies here, and he fails to catch me, so my great swords are just fleeing. That brings us to Empire turn 4. My great swords rally, and my level 4 moves outside the archer bunker just because I don't want it to get charged. I don't want him to die with the bunker if it gets charged. So he moves out of the line of sight of the Chaos Warriors there. And this halberdier unit here rallies and reforms to face the center. In the magic phase, I get up to 12-inch bubble phase protection. And onto combat. I managed to fell one of the Chaos Warriors here. However, he does 2 wounds to me, puts my demigryph down to its last wound here. Oh, no, it wasn't down to its last wound. It still had a couple wounds left. But I do flee. I break from combat here, and he runs me down into the woods. And his last Chaos Knight trips in the woods and kills himself. So that turns into a complete push there. And all in all, if I'm going to flee and get run down, his last Chaos Warrior tripping and dying in the woods is a pretty hilarious way to go. So I have to say, I hate to be a spoil sport here, but my MVP of this match is going to go to his own Chaos Knight for tripping in the woods, because that was just way too funny. So that brings us to Warriors of Chaos turn 5. His Nurgle Warriors here and his BSB go into my Great Swords once again. And his Tzitzit Warriors go into my Halberdier unit here. In the magic phase, as you could guess, Soul Blight goes off on my Great Swords once again. And he takes off 3 of their numbers in the combat phase. And in the combat here with his Tzitzit and my Halberdiers, he does a massive 10 wounds to my Halberdiers. I only do 1 wound in return. As you could guess, I flee and I run. No, actually, I stick that turn, believe it or not, because I am steadfast, because I do have more ranks. And that brings us to Empire turn 5. I get off another bubble again. Phase protection is the only way I can stay alive, so it would seem. In that last turn, my Halberdiers took 2 wounds. I was outside the 12-inch bubble, so he didn't have -1 to hit me. That's why I took so many casualties. So we just go into combat since I don't have much else going on here. My Great Swords drop to 2 remaining, and I do no wounds once again. And my Warrior Priest declines the challenge from his Chaos, whatever it is there, and I just move to the back. He's no use with hate now that Hatred's gone. And he does 5 more wounds to this unit. He does have -1 hit because the bubble is in range. And I only managed to do 1 wound to him. This time, I break from combat, and I flee through the impassable terrain, take some casualties along the way, and he fails to catch me. And next to 3 of my guys just die to the terrain. And that brings us to Chaos Warriors turn 6. He just reforms to try and death snipe my wizard once again. Not much I can do about that. And he Spirit Leeches him off the board. And to add insult to injury, the Nurgle Warriors finish up the Great Swords. So the Empire here dies in quite the epic fashion. Victory to the Chaos Warriors. Some Soul Blight and Nurglage there. That is a pretty devastating combo. Pretty much my Great Swords were rendered innocuous because of Soul Blight. You know, Great Swords only being Strength 5 with a great weapon is pretty bad, and the fact they got Soul Blight down to Strength 4 is even worse. And the Nurgle with a -1 to hit means it was pretty tough to hit. The one round they did hit in epic fashion, as you can see, that one combat I needed, where I hit with 8, and I just needed to do a few wounds there to sway that combat. I just failed with all 8 of my 2 wound rolls there. But that's why you roll dice. The Spirit Leech, man, that spell really hurted me in this game, especially with my BSB dying on turn 1, and then finishing off the level 4 in the last turn. And that brings us to the grand design. The way I combo. I set up those charges where I got those flanks. I mean, negating ranks. I just really needed to win a combat by a few, and have him fail his leadership test, and it just didn't happen. And that one with that giant conga line, I had that one opportunity to really just completely cripple the Chaos Warriors army, and the dice just didn't pull through for me. But I think planning wise, I think this game I played it correctly. It's just the dice didn't follow through in tandem, and it was definitely, you know, all that effort and just went to waste. And that just goes to show, well, this list, the way it was designed, when I took out all my toys, it was all bodies, and it relied on a lot of, not so much tricks, but rolling and positioning and charges and setting up, you know, the flanks and all that. And without the toys, it's a lot harder to hit, especially with Nurgle. I wish there's so many points in this Hurricanum where, in this game, where if I had my Hurricanum, I easily could have gave all those units +1 to hit, and that combat would have been a completely different fashion. And having the cannons, would have made a huge addition, you know, a huge change in this game. But, you know, had I had that extra 500 points, he would have had the extra 500 points as well. So maybe there would have been some more viable targets for the cannons. But the Hurricane was definitely missed in this game. Having that +1 to hit would have been instrumental to fixing that whole combat there in the middle. So, but all for naught. That's the way the dice went, and the Chaos Warriors take this one home. So my poor Empire can't seem to catch a break here. So thank you very much for listening. Catch you next time.